Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 44, the conditions of the synthesis, beginning with the second paragraph. We'll do a recap?
Yeah.
Good.
That's right. We'll do a recap, and also this phrase that he has put in italics, it's from the Gita, and we'll dwell a little on that and give some examples to ourselves. So first of all, we'll have a summary of what he has said earlier. Okay? So in the previous para he says, the ultimate truth of existence is Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness and bliss, in which Chit is always associated with Shakti, power. Consciousness and power always are associated with, they go together. At the summit, they are fused into one single truth along with Sat and Ananda. They are not three things, they are one, integrally. You can't separate them. But in the lower hemisphere, where the one becomes the many, they become separated, although always together in inverse proportional to each other. In inverse proportion to each other. The more Shakti there is, the less consciousness there is up to the spiritual levels of consciousness. We discussed that. In matter, Shakti is complete, but consciousness is sleeping. In the self, when you go above the mind, the consciousness is almost full and Shakti is not there, it is absent. It is held back. It's not active. That's why you use the word immutable. So, in matter, Shakti dominates. Chit has become infinitely weak and involved in the movement of Prakriti. It has got absorbed by the movement. In the movement itself, concentration is embedded inside but without power. Okay, in matter. But in the self above outer nature, Chit dominates and Shakti is held back in abeyance.
In all the ranges of the higher nature of the mind?
It goes on changing.
Mm-hmm.
The higher you climb in the spiritual levels of consciousness, your power starts increasing.
Yes.
But it becomes absolutely full at the supramental level. But even if you have a glimpse of the supramental level, it's not enough to change the body permanently. If you want to change the body permanently, even the body, you can transform your mind, you can transform your vital, but the body has not yet been transformed by anybody. Only if you stay permanently in the supermind do you have the power to change the body also. That's the next race. So when you are stationed, your consciousness is stationed permanently in the supermind, you have the full power to change even the matter.
But it seems that on its own, the body is beginning to transform.
Oh yes. That's in the process.
Yes.
Nature is cooperating.
Yes.
That's right. This business of the higher you go, the more you have the power to change the lower. You can give yourself an easy example. Think of the sea. Okay? It is, let us say, the deepest ocean is 7 miles deep, it seems. The Pacific Ocean. But we can say, let's say sea is 5 miles deep. Okay? As you keep going down and down, two things happen. One is it becomes darker and darker, and the other is that the pressure increases. That's the reason why you have to, when you are diving, you have to dive slowly and adjust your body to the pressure of that body. If you come up, when you have gone down and you come up too fast, you can bleed. Because your body has adjusted to the pressure of that lower, and when you come up, that pressure is too much for the air. So you have to adjust very carefully.
It's called the bends. The bends.
Yeah, that's right, the bends. That's right, that's the word used. So, if I am 1 meter above the sea surface, I can shine a light, a 100-watt bulb. It will go down to maybe 1 or 2 meters. But it won't go down more than that. If I want my light to go further down, then I have to use a more powerful light. I have to use a, let's say, 1000-watt bulb. Then it will go down to 10 meters.
And
not
this
more
would
than that.
correspond to the next level.
That's right. So the deeper you want to go and change, you have to go higher. It's very easy to understand this example.
Good example.
So that's the first thing. Then he says, but in the self above outer nature, Chit dominates and Shakti is held back in abeyance. Now, the Advaitin follows the path of consciousness. He seeks Purusha, rejects Prakriti. Tantra, on the other hand, goes ultimately to Purusha, but proceeds and journeys through Prakriti, Shakti. The Tantric does not reject the physical world. He masters the vast force of Prakriti. In Vedanta, Prakriti is seen as Maya, creator of division, and stands rejected. What about the integral yoga? In the integral yoga, the conscious soul is the Lord, essentially the Lord, Master. Nature soul is his energy which obeys the commands of the personal divine. So, different ways of looking at things. You have to know, it's a long discussion if you want to know Prakriti, Purusha and all that. But for the time being, this will do, okay? So, Advaita rejects the physical world as unreal. Okay? Tantra does not reject the physical world as unreal and wants to master it. Okay? So they go through Shakti. Sri Aurobindo also does not reject the physical world as unreal, but he wants to also master it like the Tantrics. But he wants to master it permanently, not in an individual body. A Tantric may, to a certain extent, have control over his own body, but that's only one individual. Sri Aurobindo wants it to apply to everybody on earth in the next level of consciousness, in the next level of evolution.
And this was their great sacrifice, because they could have done it for themselves immediately.
Yes. So, that's what he's saying in the previous para. Then, in the self, this energy is absorbed. The Shakti is absorbed in the consciousness, assimilated into the substance of the blissful self. Then there is rest, immutability, a static condition in which there is no time and no space. But the Purusha descends into the action of his energy. Then there is action, creation, dynamic becoming. Ananda is the creator, but tapas, the force of consciousness working on its own substance, produces the universe. The universal creation begins with the real idea. You can use the word archetype or the blueprint if you want. Before a builder creates a building, he has a blueprint, he has a plan. So all these plans are in the supermind, from which are created all the infinite forms in the physical universe. But since there is always consciousness and force, knowledge and will, the creation of what is intended is absolutely certain and infallible. In our case, consciousness and knowledge and will are there in different proportions. I may have the knowledge of how to do something, but I don't have the will. I may have the will to do something, but I don't have the knowledge. But there in the supermind, knowledge and will are both present and both influence each other. So the creation is absolutely certain. That's what he's saying. The certainty of purpose fulfilling itself perfectly is the basis of all yoga. If you are sure of what you want to do, then you can do it, provided you put in sufficient energy. Chit and Shakti are at the summit, become faith, knowledge, and will, energy in action. And the Gita says, Yo yat shraddha sa eva sa, which means whatever is the faith in a man, that he can become. Okay? So this is what he said in the previous para. But this whatever is the faith in a man that he can become is an interesting thing. And we can give ourselves several examples of how true it is. Number one, you go to the nursing home and there's a big board there with mother's handwriting. Finally, it is faith that cures, not the medicines. If you have the faith, it will cure you. Okay? So now what is meant by this faith? Your belief. Okay? There are experiments in science where they take a group of 20 people and give the real medicine to 10, and the others, they don't give the real, it's no medicine at all, but they tell them that it's a medicine. I forget the name.
Placebo.
Huh?
Placebo.
That's a word. Now those who believe in that 10 persons who have been given no medicine, if they have the faith, they'll get cured without the medicine. So this is an interesting example. Then the other example is also very interesting. When you are hypnotized, okay, you have surrendered yourself to the hypnotizer, and he tells you, actually everybody cannot get hypnotized because if they have a strong will, you may feel, why should I listen to this fellow? You have to submit yourself fully. And if he says, I'm going to count 10 and you will fall asleep, you say, okay, I'll do that. And then you really fall asleep. But you can speak, you can answer him, but the consciousness has receded into the intraconscient. The waking consciousness is sleeping. Now, if the hypnotizer tells you that I am going to put a burning cigarette butt on your finger, and actually he puts only a pencil. Because of his faith, the burn marks will appear on his.
And what about them lifting 1,000 pounds?
That is what our Chinmay did all the time.
Yes, exactly.
Will, yes. Will and faith. So whatever is your faith, that you can achieve. But your faith has to be 100%, without any questioning. We feel that we have faith, but always there is some doubt lingering in the background. Okay, I have a faith, but will it become true? It has to become 100%. So, that is what the Yoya Shraddha Saeva Sa. Whatever is the faith in a man. In the synthesis later on, Sri Aurobindo says, consciousness has got 3 powers. The power to know anything, the power to acquire anything. That's why the yogi can acquire anything he wants. Okay, and but there should be no. That's an interesting. We'll discuss that later on. And the third thing is you can become whatever you want. That's the power of consciousness combined with faith.
With faith, yes.
Yeah, that's the power of consciousness. So when I tell this to children, they ask me, "Oh, then I can get whatever I want. If I want a TV, I can get it." The condition has to be absolutely without desire, without ego, without attachment. Then you can get what you want. So it's not that easy. Okay, now we go to the next para. We see then what from the psychological point of view, and yoga is nothing but practical psychology, is a conception of nature from which we have to start. How do we see nature? It is the self-fulfillment of the Purusha through his energy. I'll read the whole para first. But the movement of nature is twofold, higher and lower, as we may choose to term it divine and undivine. The distinction exists indeed for practical purposes only, for there is nothing that is not divine, and in a larger view it is as meaningless verbally as the distinction between natural and supernatural, for all things that are natural. All things are in nature and all things are in God. But for practical purposes, there is a real distinction. The lower nature, that which we know and are and must remain so long as the faith in us is not changed, acts through limitation and division, is of the nature of ignorance and culminates in the life of the ego. But the higher nature, that to which we aspire, acts by unification and transcendence of limitation, is of the nature of knowledge and culminates in the life divine. The passage from the lower to the higher is the aim of yoga. And this passage may effect itself by the rejection of the lower and escape into the higher, which is the ordinary viewpoint. or by the transformation of the lower and its elevation to the higher nature. It is this, rather, that must be the aim of an integral yoga. So, he is talking of a higher nature and a lower nature. Again, go back to the image of the sea. At the higher level, even if you go down 1 meter, there is light. You look up, you will see the light. Go down, 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 down into the darkest portion. You open your eyes also, but there is only darkness. This, our world that we see here, you can compare to the bottom of the ocean. Dark. We are in ignorance.
But somehow the light is still there.
It is there like the tree is in the seed, inherent, potential. It is there. Because the principle of this gradation is that the one involves himself into the lower. As I told you, it's like a collapsible telescope or a Russian doll. Okay? Supermind is in overmind. Overmind is in intuition. Intuition is in higher mind. Higher mind is in normal mind. Normal mind is in the life. And life is in matter. And matter is in the inconscient. So it's all compressed like that. Now it has like a jack in the box, it has to come out. And that's evolution. That's what is happening. Okay? So there is a higher nature and a lower nature. The higher nature is the light. The lower nature is the darkness. In which level we are. Okay?
Why does he call it divine and undivine?
Because, these are all concepts we must have very clear in our minds. Okay? Remember 3-4 principles and everything becomes clear. I keep stressing this because it's very important for understanding. The highest and the lowest are very similar in many ways, but there are many differences also. The highest is infinite, the lowest also is infinite. Okay? The highest is one. It divides itself into the many. In matter you have infinite atoms. Okay? The highest is formless. The inconscient also is formless. So they are mirror images of each other. Okay? In a mirror, if you see, left becomes right and right becomes left. So they are very, very similar. The inconscient and the superconscient are very similar. There is only one big difference. That is light and this is darkness. Okay? So the universe seems to start from here for the materialist. He says, universe is starting from matter. Life is coming out, mind is coming out. It's matter that is producing the universe. But this doubt can remain for a long time. In the Life Divine we are reading that. This doubt, which is the real source of the universe? Is it up or is it down? You solve the problem only when you go to the supermind. Then you realize that that is the real source. This is also a source, but a secondary source. So, in the scale, the upper is the divine because there is only light. But when you come down here, the one has become the many. So when it becomes the many, you have the opposites, you have the dualities. You have light, you have darkness. There you have only light. But here you have light and darkness. You have hot, cold, all the dualities. So there is truth and there is falsehood. There is generosity and there is miserliness. There is kindness and there is cruelty. So you are at this level, but when you rise, you see that they are really the two extreme poles of the same vibration. There is no essential difference between love and hate. They come from the same source. Just as light also becomes darkness. Usually, you can think of it in this way. Go to the theatre, the program is about to start, the lights are on. Okay? But the bell rings and the play is about to start. The lights start dimming. They become dim, 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 dim. Finally, there is no light, there is darkness. So, is darkness a essential reality or is it the absence of light? It's the absence of light. Darkness has no independent reality. It's a dependent reality. That's what Shankara says also, and Sri Aurobindo agrees with that. But essentially it's the same. It is darkness, it is light which has the capacity to mold itself and limit itself. Consciousness limits itself and becomes unconsciousness. Ananda limits itself and becomes pain, pleasure, indifference. So, the lower is essentially the divine, but it seems to be the opposite. So, when we are here in the lower consciousness, we are faced with both truth and falsehood, life and death, and they are valid for us. But when you keep climbing in consciousness, going higher and higher, these things go on changing. The way you look at things go on changing. At every level, there's a difference.
So when we see wars,
okay,
and killing,
yeah,
it is not illusion, because Sri Aurobindo says it is
yes,
real.
It's not illusion. So,
but when we see it from the very highest, there is no
okay.
war.
So, okay, we'll go briefly into that also. So, instead of going into war, I will say violence. Okay? Now, let me say a tsunami comes. It is a violent force of nature. It kills 100,000 people. For you, it is very, very, something very bad, something very evil. You don't attribute that to a, but you can apply that to a cruelty to an ant, then you say that. Okay, but when it comes and destroys so many, you don't like it. But when the same wind becomes a gentle breeze, you like it. They are opposites. And yet they are essentially the same. And what are they? Just wind. That's what you see when you go to the higher level. You get the point? So, hate and love are really the same. You are seeing as two different ends. You go to the higher level, okay? You go beyond evil and good. You go beyond moral standards. Dualities, you have gone beyond the dualities. So you see everything as only principles. So when you are in that consciousness, war is nothing but force at its highest. It's just force. It happens to kill, but that doesn't matter. Because destruction and construction, destruction and creation are always going together. That's the significance of the Indian Trinity. Brahma is creating, Shiva is destroying instantly, but Vishnu seems to maintain it. So there is, at every instant, there is a destruction, there is a construction, and you feel that there is no difference. Everything is the same. This also can be explained in another way, okay? It's interesting, because these concepts must become clear. Take the clock, okay? You have a second hand which is moving, okay? So, every 1 second, it moves one slot, right? Okay. Now, make that needle move every half a second. Okay? Okay. You can see it stopping and you can see it moving. You can see it stopping and you can see it moving. Make that half a second 1/4 of a second. Make it 1/1,000,000th of a second. Will you see the rest? You will see only a movement. That's our world. But there is static condition there. So that's the difference between the higher and the lower. So what you are seeing is something, so that is the reason why there is creation, instantaneously there is destruction. When you feel there is the same, because the next instant itself, even instant is wrong. It gets created again. That's why you see a continuity and no destruction, but destruction is there all the time.
So, will destruction for a greater creation always be there?
Always together. The divine is always creating and always destroying. If you are at one level and you want to go to another level, don't you have to destroy the lower? You have to destroy to go higher. When a building has become old, you have to break it down and build a new one. So the two principles are always same. We associate evil, unpleasantness with destruction. That's not true at all. There's no need for that. This is something that you see in the Gita. Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, rise to another level of consciousness and see that your moral ideas are wrong. And then you will obey the divine command to kill the enemies. This is something that is not very easily understood. The divine is telling man to kill. What is that? So this is the truth. See, you can kill with hate and anger. That's why we associate violence with something bad. But I can also kill someone without any hate and anger, because it's a divine command for me to do that. Okay? You can do that even out of compassion. Nah? Suppose your horse has broken a leg and is very, very sick. What do? He is not disturbed. If there is attachment usually, and you will feel some pain in doing, but you are doing it for his good. So destruction is possible without anger, without hatred, without a sense of recoil. A calm, quiet. That's what Durga is doing. Durga is killing the asuras. Is she disturbed? Is she angry? Certainly not. Okay, so that's higher and lower. The higher divine and the lower divine. There's a whole chapter on the left divine, the divine and the undivine. So, the Advaita philosophy says that there is nothing undivine. You are seeing it in the wrong way. It's your problem. This also we discussed the other day. There is the knower and the known. And that which joins them is the knowledge. Right?
Yes.
But how do you get this knowledge? You have to use instruments of knowledge. So, if the instrument of knowledge is defective, your perception of the to be known is defective. So, you have to use better and better instruments, and then you will see the reality. Our senses are all very imperfect. No? We don't see ultraviolet, infrared. Our ears don't hear sound which dogs can hear and bats can hear. So everything is relative. We see only a section of sound, a section of light. We also experience only a section of existence. So that's what is meant by the cosmic consciousness. Now you go up and you see your consciousness extended. It's not a section anymore, it's everywhere. That's why you get knowledge. But otherwise you are in ignorance. Okay? So, higher nature and lower nature. So, we see then what from the psychological point of view, and yoga is nothing but practical psychology, is a conception of nature from which we have to start. So, in the integral yoga, our conception is this. It is the self-fulfillment of the Purusha through his energy. The Purusha fulfills himself. His consciousness, his ananda is fulfilled through Prakriti in the physical world.
Manifestation,
and he also fulfills himself. We are unable to fulfill ourselves. I have a desire and I want ananda, but I can't always fulfill it. But yoga is nothing but the fulfillment of your soul in the physical world. That's the ultimate aim. Okay? So, it's a concept from which we start. It is the self-fulfillment of the Purusha through his energy. But the movement of nature is twofold, higher and lower. As I said, the top of the sea and the bottom of the sea. Or, as we may choose to term it, divine and undivine. As we may choose to term it. These are only definitions.
Yes.
When I say undivine, I mean there are dualities. It's a question of nomenclature. Okay? When I say divine, I mean there is oneness. There are no dualities. There is no ignorance. There is knowledge. That's what is meant.
Yes, it's very important to read the words so carefully.
Yes.
We may choose to term it.
Yeah. And we may choose to term it. It's your way you are defining it. Okay? So, the distinction exists indeed for practical purposes only. When you are in the physical world, you do see opposites. You see falsehood and you see truth. Therefore, it is very true at a practical level. It applies only here. But as you keep going up, you see that your view of things was wrong. As I said, it is only wind that you see. You don't see the soft breeze and the hard storm. You see only the wind. It's acting differently. But essentially it is just that. So it's the energy of the divine which is there, and you see that it is energy that is acting. Sometimes acting this way, sometimes acting that way. But you don't attribute any good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant to it when you are at the higher level. Even Nietzsche discovered that, because there are books, Beyond Good and Evil.
Yes.
That means you have gone to the self. Of course, he overstressed the Shakti aspect. That was the whole problem for him. Sri Aurobindo calls him a seer, but a blind seer. Because he misinterpreted that only the power aspect he was stressing too much. Okay, so the distinction exists indeed for practical purposes only, for there is nothing that is not divine. And in a larger view, it is as meaningless verbally as the distinction between natural and supernatural. We'll dwell a little on this. What you are used to certain laws here are natural for you, and you feel that they are permanent. Go to another level and you see the laws are changing. You go 100 miles into space, only in the physical world. No more gravitation. So that is supernatural for you. So when someone gets a power to even here on earth levitate, you think it is supernatural. There is nothing supernatural. He is applying laws on another level because he has the power to do that. Very simple. There is a very interesting video of a man. It's called, you can check on your internet if you want. The fireman, fire yogi of Tanjore. Okay?
Tanjavur.
He prepares himself for 1 week and then he lies down on fire for a short while. But not very short while, half a minute perhaps. And he gets up. Nothing happens to him. But he has to prepare himself for 1 week. So, supernatural and natural, this is the thing. That what you think are the laws here can be changed. Gravitation is not permanent at all. So, you call that supernatural, but there is nothing supernatural about it. When you go there, the laws change in that level. It's like countries, different countries. And the laws go on changing.
I saw the fire walking ceremony.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stand closer than 25 feet away.
Yeah.
And men were carrying their children and walking through this.
Yeah.
Now, the biologist Lyle Watson said that this is not unnatural at all. You hydrate yourself tremendously, you prepare yourself, and he walked through it. No pain at all.
You have seen that?
Yes.
But there are many who afterwards you examine and they see blisters on the feet. Because they don't have the faith. Again, we come back to the question of faith.
Right, right.
So it depends on what is your faith. As I told you, you put a pencil and you believe that it's fire, it's going to be fire. You believe that nothing is going to happen to you, you can escape from it. So everything is relative. So we have the... So there's he's saying meaningless between natural and supernatural. For all things are natural at their levels. Okay? All things are in nature and all things are in God. But for practical purposes, there's a real distinction. In the physical world, yes, there is truth, there is falsehood. Hot water, cold water. They're all dualities are there in the physical world. No dualities at the higher levels of consciousness. It is only wind, not a soft breeze and a violent breeze. It is only wind that you see. It is acting differently. Okay? The lower nature, that which we know and are and must remain so long as the faith in us is not changed, acts through limitation and division, is of the nature of ignorance and culminates in the life of the ego. So when you are in the lower nature, okay, you have ego, you have ignorance, and there is no faith. But when you go to the higher nature, there is faith, there is no ego and no ignorance. Laws change at that level. Okay? So, but the higher nature, that to which we aspire, acts by unification and transcendence of limitation, is of the nature of knowledge and culminates in the life divine. Now Srimad is saying, to go to the life divine, there are two possible ways. The passage from the lower to the higher is the aim of all yoga. I am adding the word all because he is going to make a distinction. All yoga wants to go to the higher level from the lower. And this passage, here comes the difference, may effect itself by the rejection of the lower and escape into the higher. This is the Buddhist point of view, this is the Jaina point of view, this is the Mayavadin point of view. Escape from here and go there and remain there. Enjoy the bliss forever. The ordinary viewpoint. Or by the transformation of the lower and its elevation to a higher nature. This is Sri Aurobindo point of view. Transform the lower and take it up. Don't reject it. You can reject it and go, it's fine. You have solved your problem. Individual problem you have solved.
So those who have gone into that realm, do they have the choice of coming back into a body or not?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. There are many possibilities. Exactly. So when a soul escapes into the higher nature, many things can happen. Okay? Either they can disappear into the infinite from where they came. I don't want any more life in the physical world. It's full of falsehood and suffering. I don't want. The soul has a choice to do that. The river comes and merges into the sea. There is no more river. No individuality at all. Okay? There is one choice. The other choice is they can station themselves there permanently in that subtle world. That also is possible.
Do they help from that world?
They can help, or they just keep enjoying their own condition. Or there are people like Buddha, like Vivekananda, like Sri Aurobindo, who say, no, I will take birth again and come down here and make sure that the evolution goes to the next step. I will help everybody. So all these possibilities are there.
Very good.
Otherwise, just imagine, Vivekananda was dead and gone. But he came to Sri Aurobindo in jail, in a subtle body. He had not disappeared. Because he was one of those also who said that I am interested in helping the miserable. He says in one letter to, which Sri Aurobindo quotes in the synthesis, he says to one of his Western disciples in Europe, he says, I am not interested in my liberation. I am not interested in God of knowledge, of bliss, of calm. I am interested in God the miserable, God the fallen, God the poor, God the suffering. So he wants to help. And that's exactly what Sri Aurobindo also has done. But he is doing it on a massive universal scale. Take the evolution to the next step. Your help will be for the maximum number of people who are ready. Those who are ready. Okay? So, this is what he is saying. Or by the transformation of the lower and its elevation into the higher nature. It is this, rather, that must be the aim of an integral yoga. So, here we can just... Yoga can be done in two ways. Yoga can be escaping the chains of body, mind and life. They are all chains. They are described. Body is like an iron chain. The vital is like a silver chain. It is slightly more subtle, the word. The mind is a golden chain, but it's a chain. You are a prisoner. So you escape from these chains and go there. Okay? That is one way. You are mounting, ascending consciousness. Sri Aurobindo wants you to bring down all that you have got there into the descent. Bring it down into your body, mind, life. That is Sri Aurobindo's yoga. So for him, there is an ascent and a descent. That light, that consciousness that you have got, you have to bring down into your body and use it in the physical world. What's the use of having it there and your body, mind, life remains imperfect? And that's what usually is the aim in Indian yoga. Until now it has been like that. Escape, the soul escapes. Enough, that's enough. The body-mind life will die and you don't have any body-mind life anymore. No problem. The soul is there.
And it is the same in all religions?
In
all religions?
No, not at all.
Some come back?
In which religion?
Well, I've been told that in 500, the Catholic bishops decided there would be no teaching of reincarnation.
Well, then that must be a branch of Christianity. It could be. Because in Christianity, their stated purpose is the soul is created. That itself is not, in Advaita philosophy, soul is not created. It is uncreated. It has been there, it will always remain. But in Christianity, the soul is created, breathed into a body, and at the end of your life, you are judged. Either you are sent down to hell because you have done evil, or you are sent to heaven to enjoy. Essentially, in Islam also you have the same idea, that what you can't get here, you will get there in heaven.
But not coming back to earth.
No, that concept is not there so much.
That's my point, yes.
So, very clearly the last sentence is saying, what is Srimada's view? It is this rather that must be the aim of the integral yoga. Go up, get the light, get the bliss, get the power, come down with all that baggage and change body, mind, life. Okay? So, we'll read the next para. But in either case, either going up and disappearing into the infinite or bringing it down, but in either case, it is always through something in the lower that we must rise into the higher existence. And the schools of yoga each select their own point of departure or their own gate of escape. They specialize certain activities of the lower Prakriti and turn them towards the divine. But the normal action of nature in us is an integral movement in which the full complexity of all our elements is affected by and affects all our environments. The whole of life is the yoga of nature. The yoga that we seek, when we say we seek, he means integral yoga. We seek must also be an integral action of nature. And the whole difference between the yogin and the natural man will be this, that the yogin seeks to substitute in himself for the integral action of the lower nature working in and by the ego and division, the integral action of the higher nature working in and by God and unity. If indeed our aim be only an escape from the world to God, synthesis is unnecessary and a waste of time. For then our sole practical aim must be to find out one path out of the 1,000 that lead to God. Now that's interesting, 1,000 that lead to God. The other religions don't believe. There's only one path. You have to go through Christ. You have to get converted. Or you have to go through Allah. No, only one choice. But in India it's not like that. You can choose any path you want. Any path. All paths lead to God. The world of God. Synthesis is unnecessary and a waste of time. For then, our sole practical aim must be to find out one path out of the 1,000 that lead to God. One shortest possible of shortcuts. And not to linger exploring different paths that end in the same goal. But if our aim be a transformation of our integral being into the terms of God existence, it is then that a synthesis becomes necessary. So Srimad does not disapprove of the disappearing into the higher range of consciousness. Fine, you can do that, but our aim is different. We want a change of the body-mind life itself. It has not yet been done, but it will be done with the next stage of evolution. That's what he's saying. But in either case, it is always through something in the lower that we must rise into the higher existence. How do you go from here to there? You have to use whatever instruments you have.
Yes.
And your instruments you have is your body, your vital, and your mind. So use them. So, Hatha Yoga uses the body. Bhakti Yoga uses the heart and the emotions. And Jnana Yoga uses the mind. And Raj Yoga also uses the mind. And Srimad uses all the three. So how to do that, he will tell you later on. Okay, so you have to use your point of departure and their own gate of escape. So the Jnana Yogi escapes through the mind. The Bhakti Yogi, the Bhakta, escapes from the heart. And the Hatha Yoga makes the body so capable of power and stability and all, he has his realizations through the body itself. Okay, so they specialize certain activities in the lower Prakriti and turn them towards the divine. So this is what certain activities means: the mind activity and the vital activity and the bodily activity, subtle body. But the normal action of nature in us is an integral movement in which the full complexity of all our elements is affected by and affects all our environments. So we are affected by matter, life and mind. And our mind, life and matter is also having an effect in the physical world. This is an interesting conception which is, as far as I know, not so prominently put forward in Western psychology. But here in India you have Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas. Okay? The world is interacting with you through your senses. If you don't have the senses, the world is not interacting with you. You are seeing things, you are hearing things, you are smelling things, and you are eating things also. Everything is coming inside. But you are also acting and having an effect in the physical world. I can use my hands, I can slap somebody, I can cut a tree, I am doing something in the physical world. So that is Karmendriya. Jnanendriya, you are getting knowledge from the physical world through your senses. So your eyes and your ears and all these senses are what are called the Jnanendriyas, in senses of knowledge. And the Karmendriya, your action senses. Your hands, I can have an effect in the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
My legs, I can have an effect in the physical world. My words can have an action in the physical world. And my two organs at the lower end of the body are interacting with the world. So this idea, that's what he's saying here. So there is a constant interaction between the universe and the individual. Okay? So, I mean, it's a very known thing, but stress is not put on it. And you don't think it is something really to be seen. Why? Because in India, in our yoga, you have to stop the universe acting on you. You have to become absolutely immune to the incoming touches. The samatha. They come in, but you are not affected at all. So that's why it is so important, this concept of the interaction between the individual and the universe. Okay? So we go to the next sentence. But the normal action of nature is an integral movement because we can't distinguish between mind, life and body. We can't really distinguish all the time. Can we?
No.
We don't know whether our desire is really a mental thing or a vital thing.
Right.
Okay? Sometimes even we make a mistake between our vital and our body also. We can make a mistake. If I have an upset stomach, is it because I am disturbed psychologically? So, this is what he means by integral movement. We can't distinguish between all the three. Okay? That's what his meaning. So, but the normal action of nature in us is an integral movement in which the full complexity of all our elements is affected by and affects all our environments. The interchange between universe and individual. The whole of life is the yoga of nature. Even nature is doing a yoga. It has managed to pull itself out of matter and produce life. And it has succeeded in pulling only animality into thinking power. So nature also is doing a yoga. And we are also doing a yoga. Our yoga is part of the universal nature, universal yoga.
It's a good point you make.
Yeah,
Animality into thinking power.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what he's saying. And that's the reason why he says that whatever nature is doing, we'll do the same. We'll act in nature. The others are stopping. Even in India, for thousands of years, escape from the world is the norm. That's enough of a spiritual life. But nature it has taken 3 steps. Why do you assume that it won't take any more steps? So we'll do that. We'll help nature take the next step. That's the way of looking at things. Okay, so the yoga that we seek, now, this is his style, we must understand this. The yoga that we seek, who seeks? Anybody and everybody? No, the integral yogi. So he uses this word we, meaning his own system. We might miss that, that's why I'm stressing it. When he says we seek, not everybody is not seeking. He is seeking through the integral yoga. Okay? So the yoga that we seek must also be an integral action of nature. So in other words, we don't reject body-mind life. Nature is not rejecting body-mind life. When animals have come, matter is still existing. When man has come, animals also are existing and matter also is existing. So when we go to the next level of evolution, why should we reject these? We'll follow what nature is doing. That's his point. Okay? So, the yoga that we seek must also be an integral action of nature. And the whole difference between the yogin and the natural man. So who is the natural man? The man who is subject to nature. In other words, you are identified with your body, your vital and your mind. That's a natural man. The word natural has to be interpreted correctly. It's used in two senses. No? There is nature and it's natural to do this. It is nature. It's not used in that sense. The natural man who is subject to the action of nature. He is a prisoner of nature. Okay? Will be this, that the yogin seeks to substitute in himself for the integral action of the lower nature, working in and by ego and division, the integral action of the higher nature, working in and by God and unity. He is defining lower nature, ego and division. Okay? And the higher nature is not ego but God, and not division but unity. Okay? He has contrasted the two. Okay? So, if indeed our aim be only an escape from the world to God, synthesis is unnecessary and a waste of time, because you want to go there, use your mind or your heart or your body, any one faculty and go up. Because you are rejecting these. Like the building that is coming up, you are building a scaffolding, and then when you have reached it, the scaffolding is gone. But here Sremda says, no, we will retain body-mind life, because nature is doing that. We will follow what nature is doing. Okay? If indeed our aim is so, if indeed our aim be only an escape from the world to God, synthesis is unnecessary and a waste of time. For then our sole practical aim must be to find out one path out of the 1,000 that lead to God. This is a very interesting and very important point. God need not be approached only through one way. He can be approached in any way you want. The approach to him is infinite. He himself being infinite. That's also Ramakrishna's whole life is a summary of that. He says that all religions, they have got their own way of going to God. But you don't need to restrict it to that. That is one of the aspects of in Hinduism. Hinduism is not a religion. It's a congeries of religions. Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Vaishnavism, Shaivism. There are so many different, all are given the full right to go according to their own way. You don't need to impose anything on anybody. You have the full freedom to do what you want. 1,000 ways. Okay? So, exploring different and end in the same. But if our aim be a transformation of our integral being into the terms of God existence in the physical world, it is then that a synthesis becomes necessary. So Sremda is very clear, but we have to read behind the words sometimes to understand what he is saying. One example is the natural man.
Yeah.
You have to see what he means. Okay? We stop here today.